Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran. We're going to weigh in tonight on the Bryan Kohberger alibi. There's been so much talk in this case about, what kind of evidence does the prosecution have? And what about Bryan Kohberger's alibi? And if in fact it really is an alibi, how loosely can we define an alibi? For an alibi, don't you usually have to have other witnesses that are going to attest to where you've been, where you were during the time of the said crime? And don't forget that white Hyundai Elantra, which wasn't just tracked by the vehicle's computer system, but also caught on numerous video cameras in all areas en route and going to and from 1122 King Road. So when we talk about an alibi, how loose is Judge John Judge going to allow this alleged alibi? And it was back in May 1st, shortly after defense attorneys for Bryan Kohberger claimed he had an alibi for the night, actually the early mornings, of 4 University of Idaho students were murdered in November 13th, 2022. The prosecution has responded by calling the alibi legally inadequate. Kohberger is accused of, as we all know, of killing Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Zana Knodel, and Ethan Chapin at their off-campus residence in Moscow, Idaho, around 4 a.m., November 13th, 2022. All 4 were close friends and students at the University of Idaho. And we've all seen their pictures. It's up on the screen right now. Kohberger, as we all know, was a PhD criminology student at Washington State University, and he lived in Pullman, Washington, roughly 8 miles away from the scene of the crime at the time of the slayings. And of course, he's pled not guilty. You know, one of the things I asked the other night, and I think that this is fair game to ask this question. If the defense thinks that Bryan Kohberger is so innocent, and if the defense is raising this alibi, why hasn't the defense, and I'm saying they claim he's innocent, why haven't they applied for bond to have him released? That's a fair question, isn't it? Isn't it a fair question? Because if someone's innocent, why are they in jail right now? Really, what are they doing in jail if they're innocent? So isn't that a question that we all should be asking? If this man, Bryan Kohberger, is so innocent, why hasn't the defense applied for bond? So according to an April 17th court filing, public defender Ann Taylor claims Kohberger was driving outside of Moscow on the night of the murders, as well not near the home where Gonsalves, Mogen, Knodel, and Chapin were stabbed to death. Mr. Kohberger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, as he often did, to hike and run and or see the moon and the stars. The filing also states he drove throughout the area south of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow and Idaho, including Wawahi Park. In a response to the filing, which was reviewed, the prosecution says the alibi lacks the specificity required by an Idaho law, which states that the defense shall state the specific place or places which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the alleged offense, and the names and addresses of the witnesses upon whom he intends to establish such alibi. The prosecution claims that nothing in the official alibi filing is new information aside from the mention of Wawahi Park. The defendant is offering nothing new to his initial alibi, that he was simply driving around during the morning hours of November 13th, 2022. In response to the defense claim that Kohberger's cell phone data could prove he was not located near the crime scene at 1122 King Road at the time of the murders, the prosecution says in the filing that this information does not rise to the level of an alibi at the time of the homicides because the defendant's cell phone stopped reporting to the cellular network before the homicides and continued to not report until after the homicides. So is it too hard to believe that Bryan Kohberger was smart enough, a PhD criminology student, to turn off his cell phone? Because he knew and he knows that the cell phone would be used to track him. So I would assume that he's smart enough to do that, wouldn't we all? So he simply would turn off his phone. And then the evidence that the prosecution has, look, in no way am I insinuating that this is going to be an easy prosecution. No way. No way is this going to be an easy prosecution. But when you raise an alibi, don't you have to have alibi witnesses? And if you don't have alibi witnesses, don't you, the defendant, have to be your own witness and testify as to where you are at the time and what you were doing? So if he doesn't produce any witnesses to give him that alibi, then I think that he better take the stand. Do you think that his defense attorney, Ann Taylor, really wants him to take the stand in this case? I think not, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I really think not. But they're going to try to produce this alibi. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. Hold on to your service dog. Hold on to your hat, your coat. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. You're about to enter the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
You know, we just recently covered this topic, but what we focused on was the victims in this case, the victims and their families. And, you know, it's like no one wants to talk about the victims. No one wants to talk about those beautiful kids you see up on the screen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Zaina Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. But I covered that in the last episode. And I think it's important always to focus on the kids and the victims and their families, because ultimately they are the ones that this case is about. And they are the ones with whom we are seeking justice for.